Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. And wow, this one is going to be pretty interesting, I think.
Yeah, this one is really unique.
Yeah, we are diving into Buckminster Fuller's Synergetics,
Right.
but with a very specific challenge, right?
Yeah.
We're looking at American history through the lens of Synergetics.
Right.
And you guys sent in a lot of really interesting stuff. I mean, we've got Fuller's own writings, of course, analyses of his work, and there's even some historical data in here on the energy grid and geopolitics.
Yeah, and it's really fascinating because, the periods when Fuller was writing were periods of huge change, right? You've got like the Cold War, the energy crisis, and his ideas about systems really resonate with these shifts in history.
Oh, totally. So before we get into analyzing baseball diamonds as flattened tetrahedrons or talking about power grids, let's just make sure we're all starting on the same page here.
Yeah.
What exactly is Synergetics? Because just looking at these sources, I'm seeing geometry, I'm seeing philosophy, physics. It's a little bit of everything.
Right. So I think the simplest way to think about Synergetics is as a framework for understanding how things interact and create something larger than the sum of their parts.
Okay.
And Fuller, he believed that geometry held the key to this. The way shapes and structures behave. This reflects how systems work, even in something like American history.
So it's not just about shapes themselves, but what those shapes can tell us about relationships.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a very unique way of looking at things.
It is. It is. Okay, so to bring this down to earth a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
Fuller, in one of his books, he says this incredibly bold statement. And keep in mind, he's writing this in the 1970s. He says, within 10 years, we could have a high standard of living for everyone on the planet.
Wow.
With the technology that already exists.
He was such a visionary.
He was. And, reading some of this stuff, it can be a little bit out there, right? But he wasn't just throwing these ideas out there.
Yeah, no.
He saw the potential in things like the energy grid if we approached it from this synergetics perspective.
Right.
But when I think about the energy grid, I just think about this, messy web of power lines.
Yeah.
It doesn't exactly scream utopia to me.
Yeah. Well,
So how does Synergetics actually apply to something like that?
think about, his geodesic domes
Yeah.
and the strength that those have and the efficiency of those structures.
Okay.
That comes from the fact that they distribute stress across the whole structure. And so he believed a decentralized energy grid could work in a similar way, where the production and consumption of energy are more localized and interconnected.
So instead of having these huge power plants that are vulnerable,
Yeah.
we have a network of smaller, more resilient sources all working together.
Exactly.
Kind of like that baseball team analogy.
Yeah.
Where the responsibility is spread out. You don't have to rely on just one star player.
Precisely. And remember, this is during the energy crisis of the 1970s.
Oh, right.
So he's really challenging the status quo here and suggesting a system that could be more adaptable and sustainable long term.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Okay, so we've got the energy grid, and he's not just thinking about energy on its own. This idea of a comprehensive universe pops up all the time in his work.
Right.
Connecting the physical and the metaphysical, suggesting everything is really woven together.
Yeah, that's really key to understanding his thinking, this interconnectedness, this idea that actions in one domain, like energy policy, ripple out and affect other areas like geopolitics.
Yeah, and he talks about the jet engine quite a bit.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like this perfect example of how technology can accelerate these connections between different parts of the world. Faster travel, shrinking the world, more interactions between nations.
Right. And the jet engine, it's really a product of material science advancements.
Yeah.
Which, again, is a field that Fuller was super into. And so it becomes this powerful symbol of how technology can really reshape the geopolitical landscape.
Yeah, completely. And the rise of globalization, in the late 20th and early 21st centuries, that really reflects this.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. It's like he was predicting these trends decades before they happened. It's crazy.
Yeah, he really was.
Okay, so I'm starting to see how Synergetics applies to energy, geopolitics.
Yeah.
But one of the notes you sent me mentioned baseball.
Oh, yeah.
And that feels like a bit of a curveball.
Well, he was really fascinated by baseball.
Okay.
And he saw it as a kind of microcosm of these larger systems.
Okay.
He even described the baseball diamond as a flattened tetrahedron.
A tetrahedron. Now, that's a pyramid shape, right? I'm not quite seeing it.
Yeah, so think about it. 4 bases, all connected by lines, forming the stable structure.
Okay.
That's basically a tetrahedron. And Fuller believed this shape, being the simplest 3D form, was like this fundamental building block of systems, reflecting stability and efficiency.
So there's like this deeper geometry to baseball. It's not just the diamond on the surface.
Exactly. And just like with the energy grid, understanding the geometry of the game, the relationships between the players and the positions, that could lead to strategic advantages.
So a manager with a good grasp of synergetics could have an edge.
Maybe so. Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay, well, we're just getting started here, right? We're scratching the surface.
Oh, yeah, this is just the beginning.
Amazing. So we've got energy, geopolitics, baseball, all through this lens of synergetics.
Yeah.
And there's so much more to uncover in our exploration of American history. So stick with us as we unpack more of Fuller's mind-bending ideas in part 2.
Definitely. It's pretty amazing how Fuller's ideas, they kind of foreshadow so many trends we see in American histories, especially like in the late 20th century and the early 21st century.
Yeah.
Like he had this uncanny ability to see these underlying patterns driving change.
He did. He really did. And speaking of connections, he talks about tensors quite a bit.
Right.
I'll be honest, I don't fully understand those. What are they exactly, and how do they fit into this whole synergetics framework?
So think of tensors as like the forces that hold systems together.
Okay.
Like the connectors, the invisible connectors that create relationships between different parts of the system. So like gravity is a classic example, right? It keeps the Earth and the moon bound together, even though there's this huge distance between them.
Right. Okay, so they're not physical things we can see, but forces that exert influence.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm getting there.
Yeah.
But how does this apply to something as complex as like American history?
Well, let's take the post-World War II era, for example, right?
Yeah.
The U.S. emerges as this global superpower, and its influence extends way beyond its physical borders.
Okay.
So what were some of the tensors at play during that period?
Well, you've got the economic power of the U.S., shaping global trade and financial systems, and then you have the military might, with its network of alliances and bases around the world.
Exactly.
So those are definitely forces that are shaping the geopolitical landscape.
Exactly right. And we can't forget about the cultural influence as well.
Oh, right.
American music, movies, consumer goods.
Oh, yeah.
Spreading across the globe.
Yeah.
Further connecting people and nations. So all of these tensors are part of this complex system that kind of defines America's role in the world during that era.
It's like those, those invisible lines in Fuller's geometric models?
Yeah.
They represent those forces that are shaping the behavior of the whole structure.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay. Now, he also talks about the slenderness ratio. I'm totally lost on that one.
Yeah.
What is that all about?
It's a really cool concept.
Okay.
So basically, Fuller was really intrigued by the inherent strength of different structures, right?
Okay.
And he pointed out that a compression member, like a column in a building, can only be so tall before it buckles under its own weight.
Okay.
But a tension member, like a cable, can be much longer and still withstand that stress.
Okay.
So tension structures are inherently more efficient.
Okay.
They're able to achieve more with less material.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. And that led him to develop his ideas about tensegrity, which is a system of building that combines tension and compression in this really unique way. And you see this embodied in his geodesic domes.
Ah, okay.
Right? They're super strong and lightweight. They can span huge spaces with minimal materials.
Yeah, it's true. Those domes are beautiful.
Yeah.
I never really thought about why they were shaped that way.
Yeah, so they're not just visually striking. They're super efficient, really resilient structures.
That's amazing. Okay.
And Fuller saw tensegrity as this model for understanding systems beyond just architecture.
Oh, wow. Okay.
He believed that living organisms, from trees to the human body, they're essentially tensegrity structures.
Wow.
They rely on this balance of tension and compression for stability and movement.
Yeah.
So again, it reflects this interconnectedness that he was always emphasizing.
So he's suggesting that this principle applies to not just like physical structures, but to systems in general.
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty mind-blowing.
It is.
Okay, so we've got energy, we've got geopolitics, baseball, tensors, slenderness ratio, tensegrity. I feel like we're just peeling back these layers of complexity and finding connections everywhere.
And that's the beauty of Fuller's work, right? It encourages us to move beyond this kind of linear thinking.
Yeah.
And embrace the complexity of systems, to see the interconnectedness of everything.
I love that.
And when you apply that to something like American history, it just opens up this whole new realm of understanding.
Oh, totally. Okay, so Fuller, He was incredibly optimistic about humanity's potential, right?
Right.
He claimed we had the resources and the technology to achieve a high standard of living for everyone, like within 10 years. But he wasn't naive about the challenges, right?
Yeah.
He saw ignorance and self-interest as major roadblocks to progress.
Right, and he uses this analogy of a library.
Go.
He says the building itself can't make connections between the books within it.
Yeah.
It takes human intelligence to do that.
Right.
So we have the knowledge, but it's up to us to make those connections, to
Right.
synthesize and apply that knowledge for the betterment of humanity.
It's such a powerful image. We can build these advanced systems,
Right.
but without understanding the interconnectedness, without the wisdom to guide our actions, we risk creating more problems than we solve.
Exactly. And this is where Synergetics comes in, right? It provides this framework for understanding systems,
Right.
for seeing the bigger picture, and making decisions that are aligned with, the well-being of the whole, not just individual parts.
Okay, so we've talked about some pretty complex concepts here,
Yeah.
but I can't help but wonder, how does this apply to, the average person?
Yeah.
Not everybody's an architect or a scientist or a historian.
That's a great question. And it's something that Fuller himself really grappled with.
Okay.
He believed that Synergetics was relevant to everyone,
Okay.
regardless of your background or your profession.
Okay.
He saw it as this way of thinking, this lens through which you could approach the world
Okay.
and make more informed decisions in all aspects of your life.
So it's not just about, designing buildings or understanding scientific theories,
Right.
but applying these principles to our everyday lives.
Exactly.
Like how we interact with others, how we make choices, how we approach challenges.
Absolutely. Think about it. We encounter systems every day.
Right.
From our families and our communities to our workplaces, the global economy.
Right.
Understanding these principles of synergetics, like how things interact, how forces influence outcomes,
Yeah.
how seemingly separate elements are all interconnected, this can help us navigate these systems more effectively and
Yeah.
make choices that contribute to positive change.
It's like having a secret decoder ring for the complexities of life.
Kinda, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so if Synergetics is so universally applicable,
Yeah.
why don't we hear more about it?
Right.
Why isn't it taught in schools?
Yeah.
Or used in businesses?
That's a great point, and it kind of speaks to one of the challenges that Fuller faced. His ideas were often way ahead of their time, and they require a shift in mindset that can be really difficult for people to grasp.
Yeah.
He wasn't just presenting your information,
Yeah.
he was challenging the very way we think and perceive the world.
It's like asking us to step outside our comfort zones,
Yeah.
to let go of that linear thinking
Yeah.
and embrace a more holistic perspective,
Exactly.
which can be scary for a lot of people.
It can be, especially in a world that often rewards specialization and compartmentalization.
Right, right.
But Fuller, he really believed that the challenges we face, from climate change and resource scarcity to social inequality and political polarization, all of these things, they demand this shift in thinking.
Yeah.
We can't solve 21st century problems with 20th century thinking.
Yeah.
And Synergetics offers this powerful framework for navigating this complex and interconnected world.
So it's not just a theory, it's like a call to action,
Yeah.
a way to empower ourselves and create a better future for everyone. That's amazing. Okay, so we've covered so much ground already, but there's still more to explore in Fuller's world.
Oh, definitely.
So stick with us as we continue our deep dive into Synergetics
Yes.
and uncover even more surprising connections and insights in part 3. Okay, so we've been really unpacking Buckminster Fuller's Synergetics and how it connects to American history. And wow, this guy, he was thinking on a whole other level,
He really was.
But how did he even come up with these ideas? Was he just born seeing the world in this way?
Well, Fuller was this relentless learner and experimenter.
Yeah.
He had this incredible curiosity,
Yes.
always questioning things, observing, drawing these connections that other people just totally missed,
Totally. And one of the sources we got talks about his childhood fascination with the night sky.
Oh, yeah.
And he was really curious, what holds the stars together? These seemingly unconnected points of light. And it's like that question sparked this lifelong quest to understand these invisible forces that are shaping the universe.
Yeah, that's a great example of Fuller's whole approach,
Yeah.
He didn't settle for those surface level explanations. He wanted to dig deeper, uncover those fundamental principles that govern systems.
Right.
Whether it's celestial bodies or human societies, it didn't matter to him.
And he didn't shy away from things he didn't know about.
No, not at all.
In fact, I read that he intentionally chose to study things he knew nothing about.
Yeah.
It's like he was pushing himself outside of his comfort zone,
Yeah.
forcing his mind to make new connections.
Yeah, and that's really the key to his genius, embracing the unknown.
Yeah.
He saw learning as this constant process of discovery.
Right.
And he wasn't afraid to make mistakes along the way.
Oh,
He
yeah.
viewed mistakes as like valuable feedback,
Right.
a chance to refine his understanding and push his thinking even further.
And he developed this whole system of notation, right?
Yeah.
With symbols and diagrams
Yeah.
to represent these really complex concepts.
Yeah, it's almost like he created his own language for thinking about synergetics.
It's amazing. It is. And it speaks to his desire to really communicate these ideas in an effective way.
Right.
He understood that language often falls short when you're trying to describe systems
Right.
and their interconnectedness.
Right.
So he had to create these new tools to help people visualize those relationships in a way that was more precise and more intuitive.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about how synergetics can be applied to these big picture systems,
Yeah.
like the energy grid and geopolitics.
Yeah.
But what about our everyday lives? What are some practical takeaways for those of us who aren't trying to, design a geodesic dome
Yeah.
or solve the global energy crisis?
Well, Fuller believed one of the most powerful applications of synergetics was in personal problem solving and decision making.
Okay.
He emphasized systems thinking, encouraging us to view challenges not as these isolated incidents,
Right.
but as interconnected parts of this larger system.
So instead of just treating the symptoms, we need to look at the underlying causes and how they relate to the system as a whole.
Exactly. Yeah, it's about taking a more holistic approach.
Yeah.
Recognizing that our actions, they have these ripple effects beyond just the immediate situation.
Totally. Totally imagine you're like facing a financial challenge.
Yeah.
So a synergetics approach would encourage you to look beyond just cutting expenses or increasing your income.
Right.
It would say, okay, let's look at your spending habits,
Yeah.
your values,
Yeah.
your long-term goals,
Right.
and how they all connect to each other.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like zooming out to see that bigger picture.
Right.
Understanding how our individual choices fit within this network of interconnected systems.
And this can apply to any area of life.
Oh, absolutely.
Relationships, health, your career,
Yeah, everything.
your community. Yes.
Okay. And Fuller went even further than that.
Okay.
He advocated for what he called comprehensive anticipatory design science.
Wow. Okay, that's a mouthful.
It is a bit of a mouthful.
What does that even mean?
So basically it means using our knowledge and our creativity to design solutions
Okay.
that anticipate future needs and challenges.
So instead of just reacting to problems as they come up,
Right.
we're proactively designing these systems that are resilient,
Yeah.
adaptable,
Yeah.
and that benefit everyone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like we become the architects of our own lives
Right.
and of our collective future.
That's power. It's really inspiring, He challenged us to be more conscious of our interconnectedness,
Yeah.
to think in terms of systems,
Yeah.
and to use that understanding to design a better future.
Exactly.
And, his ideas are just as relevant today as they ever were
Oh, yeah.
as we face these huge global challenges.
Right.
Climate change, social inequality, it's all connected.
It is.
And he reminds us that we're not just passive observers. We're active participants in these systems
Absolutely.
that are shaping our world.
Yeah.
And by understanding those systems, we can make more informed choices
Right.
that contribute to positive change.
Yeah.
It's about harnessing the power of synergy to create a world that works for everyone.
Absolutely.
Well, I think it's safe to say that Buckminster Fuller and his synergetics have given us a lot to think about.
Yeah, a lot to chew on.
We've explored these really mind-bending ideas
Yeah.
from the geometry of baseball diamonds
Right.
to the interconnectedness of global systems. And it's clear that Fuller's thinking really transcended disciplines and challenged, how we typically view the world.
He did, yeah. It's been a fascinating journey, hasn't it?
It has.
Kind of peeling back those layers of complexity and uncovering those hidden connections that shape our world.
Absolutely.
And, while Fuller's work can be challenging at times,
Yeah.
it's ultimately this message of hope and empowerment.
Yeah.
It reminds us that we have the potential to create a more sustainable and equitable and fulfilling future
Yeah.
for ourselves and for generations to come.
And that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Buckminster Fuller and Synergetics.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you gain some new insights and perspectives and that you'll continue to explore the interconnectedness of everything.
Yeah, keep those aha moments coming.
Keep those aha moments coming. We'll see you next time.